Welcome to our very first podcast / episode. I'm here between two generations of family law lawyers, and combined we have roughly 60 years of family law experience that we're going to touch upon. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about how the field has evolved in family law. We're going to cover what families are facing today and some practical advice for those navigating either divorce or co-parenting. So we're going to just navigate these topics, and we're going to do so in just a very conversational manner to see what's going on and educate the general public out there who might be interested to maybe seek family law help or just to be in the know. So
sounds interesting.
Yeah, it should be good. So the first question that I have for both of you, we'll start with you, Richard. When you look at how families are navigating divorces and or separation today, in the last almost 50 years, what are some of the biggest changes that you have seen in the landscape of family law?
Well, they've been huge. When I started practicing in 1978, there was no family code. We all went by the civil code. And all of the judges who did family law, which was everybody left in the courthouse on a Friday, we all reported to Department 1, and we were disseminated throughout the courthouse to try our family law cases to bench officers who knew little to nothing about family law.
So Family Law Friday is how this all started.
That's how it all started. And
Nice.
Then in 1994, I believe we had a family code that finally came out. It was passed, I believe, the law in 92, but it didn't come into effect until January 1994. So we actually had a law book regarding family law. So us redheaded stepchildren of lawyers who did family law finally came into the light in 1994 when we had a family law code.
So to say the least, a lot has changed.
A lot has changed.
Rachael, does that surprise you at all to hear that, like that end of it?
Well, I was aware of when the family code came to be, but it just seems like a wild, wild west situation with no real, the statutes or the Bible, and having to know a handful of cases that may or may not apply to your situation is, it probably made for some creative lawyering around that time.
It did. And it was the Wild West. Wasn't unusual that judges had a pistol on the bench, but typically moms got custody of the kids and dads got alternating weekends, and the business was always worth the value of the house. And everybody got $500 in child support.
Wow.
That's kind of the way it rolled for a long time. Yeah.
How have you seen that change, especially with now we've got a lot more women either working for sure, but even breadwinners of the home, predominantly, we see a lot of working families. How has that changed? Have you seen that impact support, custody, all of that?
Oh, in a very positive way. Very much so. And I think it stems, mainly from the fact that the bench officer, is trained in family law.
Okay, so for our viewing public out there, bench officer would be who?
Would be a judge.
Okay.
And anytime you go into a family law trial, you have a jury of one. In other words, you're selling to one person, the judge, who may or may not be oriented gender-wise when it comes to custody or visitation or support, but they make the decision. You don't get a jury trial.
Well, and they updated the family code a few years ago to make it a condition that the court cannot consider is gender, and
Right.
Pulling in some, I think, very well needed anti-discrimination rules, and you cannot consider the gender identity, preference, etc. Of a parent in making custody orders. So it's like we've gone past just the gender roles, and now we've adopted, I think, maybe a far more inclusive family code.
Well, but we all grow up with some biases and feelings about how things should work or work when she or he was a kid. And so even though they're educated into that, sometimes it transgenders the law, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And you kind of feel that way sometimes in court.
Yeah.
when you're talking about a dad who wants primary custody, a dad who wants support, and the judge is not buying it.
So you're here to say that our family law system is imperfect, is what I'm hearing, and that there are biases with the judge or bench officer, and it's the lawyer's job to maybe play to that, right?
Sometimes you have to, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're selling something for your client. You're advocating for that client. You want to get the best result you can for that client. And remember, we all have 170.6s, which is the silver bullet, so to speak, to say, well, I've been assigned to this judge, but I don't want that judge. And once you do that, you have to accept the other judge. But the other side doesn't, because they have their 170.6, and they can not accept the judge we've been sent to. And then we usually go to the most experienced or the most filed against judge in the county. So
the judge shopping
the
begins.
judge shopping begins.
The grass might not always be greener on the other side, is what I'm hearing. So be careful using your silver bullet.
That's correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
So have we seen any shift of what is considered fair since, the early days in the 90s of what, practicing family law looks like, with these paradigm shifts with, the working family and that whole dynamic? Have we seen a shifting, especially over that period from the early 90s to maybe now within the last 10 years? I mean, have we seen some shifts and some dynamics change?
I think with family law, fair is a triggering word, right? Clients always come in, I just want what's fair.
Yeah.
You want what's reasonable. You should want what's reasonable specific to your case and your situation, right? So someone's custody fair in one case would be completely different than somebody's custody fair result in another case, right? So, and I think if I'm looking at some of the decisions I regularly see from judges, that's the lens that they're seeing things through, is reasonableness, not necessarily we're going to get exactly equal parenting time, which that's very, very frequent. To the extent that the parents can do that, equal parenting time is very obvious, an obvious choice if it's appropriate. But I think that's really where they're geared toward, is more so just trying to make a good, reasonable decision that's not going to mess up this family too badly, and mess up the kids' schedules, things like that.
How's that like explaining it to your client? When the client walks in the door and they say, well, I want what's fair, I want what's mine, I want, they're trying to make this absolute statement about where their life is headed. Is there anything that you've noticed that has either changed, and or how do you consult the client when that does happen?
Well, the fairs in Pomona or Costa Mesa, I often say it's not in that law book when they say it's not fair or I want fairness. Yeah. I try to have the client focus on a plan. In other words, does mom work? Do you work? Children are in school, what are your hours? Can you pick them up? Can you drop them off? Mm-hmm. You don't want your child just to be warehoused at the after school care. If mom's sitting at home and she doesn't have anything else to do, that's not best for little Mary or little Johnny. I mean, let's be child focused and let's do what's best for them. They're not suitcases. They're not lampshades. And they have a hood. Most kids want to have a hood, right? They want to go home and ride their bikes. They want to play in the street. They want to play roller hockey, baseball with their buddies. And, if you want to have a joint physical custody order, it doesn't have to be 50-50, but remember to put your child first. Put yourself second, because you're going to be a parent a long time, but that childhood is a very short season. So think of your kids first. Think of what can work. And that's how you should plan, I think. And when you're trying a custody case, don't go in there and just tell the other side what a bad mom or a bad dad he or she is. Mm-hmm. I mean, the judge can't figure it out. Your hours of work, mom hours of work, kids' school hours. Tell me what works for them. Tell me what works for you. That's what a judge wants to hear. Give me a solution.
Right.
Don't give me a bunch of problems.
Yeah.
So.
Well, are you noticing any difference, on the other side of this that isn't like custody or visitation or child focus, like, clients are coming in here with the same sort of issues, but they're maybe financially related.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that you walk through that process with them? Is it much of the same, or do you tackle that differently?
Well, so different aspects of a case financially are going to be, I guess, addressed differently. So if we're talking about property division, I will tell my clients regularly, it's a glorified math problem, right? You're putting assets and debts on a piece of paper, you're assigning them to one, the other, splitting them, however we can figure out the best solution there. And so there, to the extent that we're seeking fairness in that outcome, yeah, I mean, it's dollars and cents.
Right.
Now, there's certain things that, maybe the cash equity in the home isn't necessarily equivalent to the value of a 401k, and the lawyers can kind of argue over tax implications and all that fun stuff that we like to do, but that I find that that's the easy part, right? It's a black and white numbers game. Support, on the other hand, can be a whole different conversation, and child support, I find that it's easier to approach with the clients. We're usually representing the ones paying the support, and it's important to frame it right at the beginning with a client to say, look, this is for the support of your children. This is for the maintaining the lifestyle of the children. Don't worry so much about what it's being spent on. You're not entitled to an accounting of it. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself crazy. Think of it, it's going into one big bucket, and that bucket is paying for the housing and the school and the food and the dentist, and that's what the child support's for.
I'm hearing some topics are emotionally charged and others aren't. How is it that you guys are able to navigate, Richard, those more emotionally charged topics or subjects, and helping the client navigate that portion of it?
Well, oftentimes you bring the client to cost benefit analysis. Is the squeeze worth the juice, as they typically say? What's this going to cost and what's the probable result? That sometimes takes some of the emotions out. One of the things that I'm going to speak to lawyers about internalizing cases. It is totally wrong to internalize a case. Be objective, keep your distance, be practical, look for solutions. Don't look to litigation, and don't, look to be obstreperous or litigious if you're going to represent somebody, Well,
that could be some good information for, potential clients that are looking to hire attorneys too, to look for that, and whomever it is that they may be hiring, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the client, you're there to solve a problem, not to exacerbate the problem.
Yeah.
And speaking of the child support and spousal support, I have a criticism of the legislature says the more time you spend, the less you pay for child support. Well,
The more time you spend with the children.
Yeah. And so that creates what? Constant work for family lawyers, because little Johnny will be warehoused, but dad gets to keep the pocketbook. Or mom gets to keep the pocketbook. So oftentimes we find ourselves getting this 50-50 custody because it impacts the amount of money that you're paying for child support.
So
if that was taken out, that would be helpful, because we could probably not have so many custody battles.
Yeah. So again, to enlighten the viewers here, for those watching, what does warehousing mean? What is that?
Putting the child with a third party when the other parent's available.
Okay, so the parent may be taking the child under the guise of
50-50 custody,
having some sort of custody,
right?
But really, mom's with, or child's with, grandparents or somebody else.
Exactly.
But they're doing it for the financial purposes.
And pretty soon, little Johnny becomes 16 and he wants a car, and dad says, "Well, I can stop paying child support." So little Johnny comes in, I buy him a car.
So if,
or whatever,
if either the opposing counsel or the bench finds out about little Johnny being warehoused, can the court do anything about that?
Yeah, the court could change custody. But remember, if little Johnny's of a certain age,
then they vote with their feet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's another side of that coin, though.
What is that?
Because there, when you have, I think we see this more commonly in families where both parents work.
Right.
parents should be able to utilize a couple of hours of after school care, for example, to be able to have their child on it if they want, and they're, willing to do an equal timeshare basis. The argument would be a few hours of after school care to allow a child to remain equally.
That's a good point. You're absolutely right on that. Absolutely.
Right? And the other part of this is when we're talking about, this feeds more so, I'd say, into spousal support and the alimony aspect. But when we have a parent who is able to work but hadn't been working because financially during the marriage it made sense for them to stay home with the children, but big term, long picture, that's somebody who is capable of working and may be demonstrating good work ethic to the children if they do go back to work. Being too focused on avoiding a warehousing situation, it doesn't enable that parent to free up some time and go back to school or go back to work or start taking some steps to becoming self-supporting. So I agree, not wanting to just take a child and dump them with, right? You don't want a 5-year-old that's living half the time with grandma.
Right.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about, but not when a parent should have a right to have a daycare provider because I'm still at work and I need somebody on my custodial time to care. Mm-hmm. No, that's totally appropriate, but to ask for time that you cannot have with the child because you have duties or work elsewhere, and to leave the other parent without that custodial time is not doing the child a service.
I'm hearing that there is nuance here and context, and all of this is really important when you are to present something like this in front of the bench officer to say, hey, this is why we're doing these things. It's almost like I'm sitting between two lawyers here. Interesting. I get a steel man each side. This is great. This is great. No, this is where I like to live, right here. This is perfect.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we're going to transition a little bit. And perhaps, Rachael, can you share a moment in court or with a client that taught you like a lasting lesson on how it is that you are either viewing family law or how it is that you approach any part of your practice and how it is that you practice law?
So I would say early in my career, I learned the lesson of preparation, how important it is to show up to court prepared. And luckily I was on the good side of that lesson. It didn't bite me in the ass. But as a law school student, I was what they would call a gunner. So I'd sit in the front of the class. I'd have my notes. I was ready to go. They'd ask a question. It was annoying.
None of this
as hell.
surprises me.
I was so annoying. And I was that way as a young attorney. It's like, I'm going to know everything there is to know about this case because I will not be schooled by some smug, by some smug, older attorney just because I'm the new kid in class. Right. So, I would pour over my files. I would take them home with me. It was like I had no social life for the first couple of years of law school, but I would walk into that courtroom so overly prepared. I'd know the children's date of birth. I would know their middle names. I would know, you could ask me where Johnny was on Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Oh, that's when he has soccer practice, right? It was a lot, but it made me feel so much more comfortable coming into court and knowing what I was talking about and being familiar with it. And there's a tribe of family law attorneys that kind of breeze into court, get handed a file by some assistant that they didn't look at and kind of just show up and, oh, hey, what's your name? Oh, nice to see you again, right? And just kind of fly by the seat of their pants. And I had a few really they felt like big wins. They were just motions. They weren't anything major, but I had a few of those major moments for me where I was like, yes, I kicked your butt. And it was mostly because I just came in prepared.
Right.
And you obviously spend less and less time having to over prepare as you gain an experience. But I would say that's carried me through my entire career. I'd rather be overly prepared and well thought out in my arguments and my evidence versus just coming in and being charismatic and leaning on luck for a good outcome.
Right.
I like to comment leaning on luck, because we often lean on how's this judge doing today? How much knowledge does this judge have on the bench today? How many cases are on the calendar today? Is there only 15? Only 15. Wow, but being prepared is definitely the most important for a lawyer, to feel prepared to sit down and say, hey, I'm ready to try my case when you get that chance, because that chance is fleeting a lot of times just because of the load that these bench officers carry day in and day out. And it's a big load, and it's a big responsibility. I just told one the other day, you will make more decisions in family law in 1 week than you will do in a month in a civil case. And you will affect more people, and more lives, children's lives and stuff in family law court. Yeah.
Well, have you ever seen, like, especially with the impact of, decisions that are being made, not only by both of you as counsel, but have you guys ever seen decisions made by your clients that have had a huge impact on their own case, good or bad? And maybe share some stories about that.
Well, I was the first witness in a double homicide case because of what happened in an ex-parte one day in Lamoureux Justice System. And I often think, how could that have been avoided? What could I have done? What how this thing could have been prevented? And day after day, you kind of live with that.
I start heavy here, huh?
Yeah, I could, I used to do criminal in 1978. I could tell you, about 211 armed robbery cases, in other words. But yeah, there are decisions that you make as a lawyer that impacts people, and that they make that impacts their own persons and their case.
Well, what are some of those common mistakes that you see clients that might make that really move the needle on their case, good or bad? Are there any that you see that, like, they constantly keep presenting themselves?
Yeah. One comes to mind very, very clearly. I had a move away trial that went for almost 3 weeks, which is in some jurisdictions unheard of, in others maybe a little bit more normal. But in this case, it really didn't have any business being that long of a trial. My client was the mother who was trying to move, and she came in with legally the upper hand. She had primary physical custody. The dad had very little visitation, worked a lot. She should have been able to very easily get a move away. Her issue was engaging in the conflict. This was a high conflict case. And she came to me after years of being separated from this man and a very long history, documented history on Talking Parents, of just nasty, hostile, rude communication with the other parent. One of the things that the court considers in a move away is, if I let this parent take the children out of state, how far are they going, and how impossible are they going to make it from wherever they are now for the other parent to maintain a strong bond and a strong relationship with the children? Or are they going to get in the way of that? And is the distance going to just exacerbate that issue? And that's ultimately what happened in this case was, I did my best to counsel her to say, you got to stop with the diatribes of just, you're the worst person ever, and right, all of this crap that, and they were doing it to each other, back and forth, right? She wasn't the only one doing it, but she was asking the court for a much higher level of parent responsibility. And she was under a bigger microscope in that moment. And from the first initial meeting to when her butt hit the seat in trial, she hadn't stopped. And so even my best arguments to say, oh, well, that was in the past. She's gotten counseling. They've done co-parenting. They've, all of that was a wash because it was like you kept doing the same thing and
Getting in her own way.
got in her own way
Yeah.
and just digging into that conflict.
You want to give custody to the parent who will support the other's relationship, especially in a move-away case. I mean, that's a big component. You know, the reason for the move, the distance of the move, the ages of the children, all of that. And family, is it here or is it there? Where's the aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews? You know, where are those people? Yeah. Because that's all part of the move away issues that come up.
Are you guys seeing, and you know, we're going to be on social media with all this stuff. Do you guys find social media to continue to be a problem with
it's great
cases? Yes, with like they either continuing to post something about what's going on with their lives or like posting something about the other spouse or their children. Like, is that something that keeps coming up?
Oh, absolutely. It comes up and it comes up a lot. You know, and you print it out and you say, hey, you know, I heard you stop drinking. Oh, yeah, I've been sober. Well, let me show you this picture of you in the bar at 1 a.m.
Sure.
You know, and you look pretty blasted.
Yeah.
The dumbest thing I've seen, I had someone who was doing TikTok dances, and like the TikTok dances were relevant to the case because they're like flipping off the camera and making comments about the other parent, and it's like, okay, exhibit A, you know, this is how this person is when they're not sitting in court all buttoned up. But like the stupidest thing, imagine losing a case because you did a TikTok dance as a grown adult.
Hey, it's important to go viral these days. I mean, let's keep our priorities straight here. As we are, you know, we're getting ready to come upon the holidays. I think it's important that we talk about maybe just some general holiday family law topics here. Maybe that can help the viewership. What's the most creative or positive holiday arrangement that you've seen?
Well, there's all kinds, but the point you want to make, because doing this for 47, maybe 48 years now, you see these bench officers around the holidays, and you could shoot a cannon off in the hallway of the courthouse because all the judges most of them are gone. So these few judges who are left, they're dealing with a blizzard of ex partes.
How seasonal of you.
Yeah.
A blizzard.
Yeah, a blizzard. So thank you for picking up on that. But they are, I mean, and we've got a stack of ex partes of, oh, it's irreparable harm because I can't see my kid on Christmas Day or Thanksgiving Day. And they think there's 365 days in a year. Where have you been? How come you don't have an order? How come you don't have an agreement? How come you didn't come in here in September or October or whenever? Why is it now 2 days before Christmas or 1 week before Thanksgiving and your hair's on fire? And judges don't like that. They're thinking, I'm being punished because you people haven't been reasonable with one another. You haven't talked to one another. You haven't tried to work this out. And if you couldn't do all of that, then come in and see me and I'll make an order. But don't do it at the last minute.
So positive would be to make a plan is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Make a plan around your holiday schedule and make it early.
Make it early.
Yeah.
Maybe early.
And you know, you're limited to the reasonableness of the other side, right? To some extent. You know, sometimes if it's the very first holiday season after parents are separated, I've had to have that conversation with clients before to say, look, it's just a day. Like, we've decided that day has a particular meaning. You can give any other day a particular meaning. So if we can't get an agreement or we can't get a court order before then, Christmas can be on the 23rd.
The kid's 2.
Creative.
You could tell the kid's birthday he's 2. Yeah. Tell him it's the next week.
Right.
He won't know. And he'll have 2 birthdays. Right. How great is that?
I'm hearing creativity.
That's right. Nobody's dying here today and nobody's going to jail. So let's just work this out.
So parents tend to be stressed around the holidays no matter what. What can you say to parents that are either going through this through the first time or the umpteenth time? What is it that you guys could tell parents who are going about this process, how to reduce that stress and, you know, maybe make this season more enjoyable for themselves and or for their families?
Don't let it fall out on your children. They deserve a holiday without the cop car coming around the corner. They deserve a holiday without mom and dad screaming at one another. They deserve to be happy. They deserve to love their mother and their father. So keep it to yourselves. Don't let it fall out on your kids, because you're a bad parent if you do that.
And set the tone with the other parent, right? If this is the first conversation you're having about the holidays, it does so much to bridge that gap, to just sit down and say, as we're looking at the next 2 or 3 months of holidays, what's the most important to you? I will accommodate, right? So, most people will split somebody has Christmas Eve, somebody has Christmas morning, and then maybe they switch the next year. Some families, their family tradition is all about Christmas Eve. Other families, they could care less about Christmas Eve. It's all about Christmas morning. But kind of extending that olive branch to the other parent to say, okay, what's important to you? Let's start there.
Yes.
And
Good
then
point.
we'll work our way backwards from that.
Right.
You're going to get a lot more out of them versus I'm going to have them at 10 a.m. on Christmas morning and you can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
Right.
And the kid just wants to be happy. I could open presents at mom's house. I could open presents at dad's house. Just get along and let me do my happy dance there and enjoy Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't make it a drama.
And you don't want the kids to look back on whatever holiday it is that you're celebrating and it being no longer their favorite holiday because of what has transpired over the course of days, weeks, months, years, whatever it might be. I mean, we all have our favorite holidays for certain reasons, and usually it goes back to what your family did on those holidays.
Exactly.
Try and make it enjoyable.
Yes.
Well, when should someone reach out for legal help during this time? Is there hey, if things are going in this progression or something has happened, when should they seek for help? Is it during the planning stages? Should it be when right before the cops are going to come to the house? When does that happen?
Just before the DV order comes in.
Is there there's obviously not a bright line on when people should seek help.
Well, but let's look at it this way. Courts make orders, and people should obey orders. Custody and visitation, I'm speaking of. But
it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, but when the court is now finished, parents are on the road to co-parenting. It's a couple years, and they can change the order. How do they? And they can do it without any court intervention. All they have to do is agree. When they don't agree, that's when you pull out the court order and says, that's what it says. That's what we have to do. But when parents wish to agree and change the order, they can agree. Well, I don't want Christmas this year. You can have it. I'm going with my girlfriend to Europe or something. They can agree to that. They don't need a court order to do that. They can just agree, and because, little Johnny and little Mary are changing as they get older. And as soon as, 16, 15, they don't want to be with either one of you. They want to be with their friends.
Yeah.
They want to be with their buddies. They're pushing the envelope to grow up and get out of town. So I think parents need to keep that in mind.
I think that's some great advice for our viewers to hear that. You can do it yourself. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg and go in a court, right?
If you have an order and you agree, you can just agree to it. Do whatever you want to change.
Just have a conversation. Be normal.
Right.
Come on.
Exactly.
Well, I'm hearing some things that might stand out from other firms or other firm cultures. Can you guys maybe enlighten the audience on how it is that you guys are able to work together, and maybe how our firm might work a little differently as opposed to some other firms? And it's, I don't know, if I'm to say 2 cents on it, it's collaborative nature and how it can help serve clients.
Rachel, you want to do this? Or?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. So I firmly believe that getting more opinions or more, hey, can I bounce this off of you? Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's a blind spot. Having more minds on if it's a complex issue, I think it benefits the client.
So much.
Right. And some.
Let me just count.
Yeah,
I've been doing this 47 years, and I bring 3 or 4 lawyers into the room. I says, I'm stuck on this. I can't, this is the way I'm seeing this play out. This is my evidence. These are my exhibits. I feel as though I'm missing something. And one of them will say, well, how about looking at it this way? And all of a sudden the light bulb goes on. I go, you're right. I can go around that way. And Exactly. It's so important to get other opinions about, how to proceed or how the evidence is going to go or the testimony is going to be looked at. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're smart people, but we're not islands, right?
Right. We're not islands.
And we
Right.
don't have a dictionary of every, and we may have every case memorized and know exactly how a situation is going to play out. And so I think what makes this firm stand above the rest is the level of collaboration that just the way we have things set up allows for, because that we're greater, our what is it, our sums are greater
Than our parts.
So yeah,
That's so true. That is so true. And I think our firm's different because it's a service business, and service means returning the call, returning the email, returning the text message, getting back to the client. Be as honest as you can with the client. Let them know the cost-benefit analysis of what they're going through. I mean, that's important to them. They need to know the truth. And we know pretty much how a case is going to go most of the time. I know from almost the get-go. But we also listen to our client. What do you want? How can we get there? What's the probable result? I mean, let's sit down and talk, which we do with our clients, and try to resolve these issues in an honest, most expeditious way we can, keeping cost in mind. So that's how I think we differ a lot. I don't know why lawyers don't pick up the phone more often than not to call the other lawyer. I don't know why other lawyers can't be civil, right? And say, let's just sit down and talk. I don't know why we can't get more, 4 people in a room and bring up a balance sheet and says, this is where we see that the numbers going, the house, the cars, the business. And let's talk about what's practical for custody and visitation. Don't let the boogeyman decide your life. And the boogeyman is the judge, the government. The government sits on the bench with the black dress on. The government's going to make your decisions for you. And how often do we trust the government to do that for us? Ask yourself that before you walk into that courtroom, wanting the government to take care of all of this.
So it sounds like coming full circle here, going back to reasonableness as far as quote unquote fairness. Maybe we are looking at that through a different lens as people who are going through this process. What's reasonable, and sitting down and trying to be able to work things out themselves or with the help of attorneys that can help you get to that point and not stir the pot and, make it more about themselves and internalize whatever winning or losing looks like to those people. Because really, at the end of the day, who's this about?
Well, at the end of the day, if you have children, you're divorcing to each other and not from each other, because little Johnny is going to marry little Mary, and they're going to have babies, and you're going to be a grandparent, and, you're not going to be invited to the wedding or the birth unless you two get along. Yeah. So you might as well start figuring it out. Yep. Because that's the way the planet works.
Well, do you guys have any parting knowledge to give to the viewers here or listeners on what it is that we discussed today?
Rachel? We talked about a lot.
Sure.
This is your message to the world. Let it loose. Here you go.
To tell all of the world.
Yeah.
Well,
I think there are a lot of different styles of attorneys. I think there's you go into your first interview with an attorney looking for something in particular. I think if we're talking to someone who is interviewing attorneys and looking to hire someone, look for the problem solvers. Don't look for the ego. Don't look for the flashy. That's all nice. That might make you feel better in the moment, but find the problem solver, because this is something that the decisions you make in your divorce, especially when there's children involved, they're lifelong decisions.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, I often tell people that, hey, I'm not the only good lawyer in town or whatever. There's a lot of us out there, but get somebody you can talk to. Get somebody that will talk to you, that will answer your questions. That's practical. That speaks plain English. That could be honest, right? That will call you back. you know, not somebody who's going to be litigious or obstreperous and bill you to death, you know. You come in here for a solution, not to exacerbate the problem, you know, and you know, moving on, you know, and it's not my decision to tell them you need a divorce or not a divorce. That's not my, you know, I don't do that. They have to make the decision.
Right.
But a lot of times we're staying together for the kids. And I just look at it and I go, really? So you have no love in this household. You don't like each other. You don't talk to each other. There's constant fighting. Occasionally a police car comes up and you're doing this for the kids. So what are you thinking? You know, they're probably happier if you're not together, right?
Something to be considered.
When I used to represent children, they were happier when the parents who fought were not together because the shoe wasn't going to drop. There was going to be peace in the household. And that's very important to a kid.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I think this was a good first go around at this. I think the plan is to do more. So we'll see where this leads, but this was a good time.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Good.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.